Hi everyone, my name's Jo and welcome to another tutorial. Today's demo is all about a beautiful beaded bracelet. This is the one I'm going to show you how to make. I've used iris duos as the bigger bead through the center there, and then size 11 and size 8 seed beads. The iris duos are chalk white Lila Vega luster, and the seed beads I've used champagne gold, and I've got a little bit of purple accent in there on the edges too. And we make this by using right angle weave, so it's a little bit of a right angle weave masterclass if you want to look at it that way.
We'll start by having a look at our materials a little more closely. So to start off with, I have got, these are my accent 11s, which are just either side of the 8 on that top little picot edge there. So these 11s are Duracoat silver lined light amethyst. Then I've got an 8 and an 11, both in the Duracoat galvanized champagne. And I've got my iris duos, which are chalk white Lila Vega luster, this beautiful purple. And you'll see iris duos very definitely have a front which is slightly more domed and a back which is flattened, and of course they are double drilled. I'm also using some fireline. I normally go for a 6 pound in weight. I've got a size 10 beading needle, a toggle clasp, and something to end my threads off. Because of the fact that this is a very repetitive pattern, I'm not going to remake the entire bracelet with you. I'm just going to do a small section, but I will show you how I added on the clasp as well. So once you've got your materials out, you'll be ready to get going with. You're going to want to add about 2 meter length of your chosen beading thread onto your needle. You may have to add in a bit more if you're going to make a bracelet that's longer than mine, or you may use slightly less. But one important tip before we get going is to take your iris duos and just pop your needle through both holes to ensure that they haven't been clogged up with a coating. Sometimes a coating that gets put on the bead can build up a bit of residue inside those holes, and then it makes it difficult for you to get your needle through. And there's nothing more frustrating than getting halfway through a project and you can't get your needle through one of the beads. So we're going to start off by picking up 4 of our iris duos, and we're going to pick them all up the same way, but we're going to interspace them with a size 11 seed bead in the champagne gold. So I'm going to go 1 iris duo, 1 11, another iris duo, and I'm making sure that when I pick them up and they sit on my needle, they're all sitting the same way. Another 11, another iris duo, a third 11, a 4th iris duo, and a 4th 11. So I've got them all on my needle and they're all facing with their domed tops up towards me. And I'm going to move those down towards the end of my tail thread. You don't need to leave a long tail for this. We're actually going to tie it off to begin with, and we'll add in the clasp as we are beading. So I'm going to just tie these off using a normal overhand knot to begin with. Haven't left a very long tail to play with here. And then I'm going to do a surgeon's knot where I take the thread through the loop once and then through the loop a second time. And we just want to make sure that the knot is going in the right place. Pull your threads really tight. And then I'm going to just pass the needle through that iris duo, which is going to pull my knot into the bead. And when I zap off my tail thread, I'm not going to zap through the knot. So this is the beginning of our right angle weave, which runs throughout the center of our bracelet. But before we continue, I am going to add a little bit to each of the side iris duos. So this is going to be my starting point, and I'm going to continue my right angle weave in this direction. But before I pass through the beads to be exiting this right hand iris duo in order to continue, I'm going to add a bit. And I'm going to do that by picking up an 11, an 8 and 11, and my thread is exiting the lower hole of this iris dura on the left, on the right hand side, and I'm going to pass up through the hole on the left. And I'm going to do the same on the top, so 111, 18, 111, and my thread is now exiting the hole on the left at the top, and I'm going to pass down through the hole on the right. That's where I pulled my knot in, so it's a little bit tight, but there you go, I've got my needle in. Just give those beads a bit of a helping hand to sit in the right place. So that means that when I continue this way, because I'm going to do exactly the same thing on this right hand iris dura, I'm not going to see any thread sitting above or below the bead as I link the holes together. So now I'm just going to pass through my beads, so through the 11 and the iris dura, and through the 11 and up through the iris dura, because I need to be exiting this iris dura in order to continue. But before we continue, we're going to do exactly the same to the top and the bottom of this iris dura as we did with the first one. So that's picking up an 11, an 8 and 11, passing down through the other hole of our iris dura, picking up 111, 18, 111, and passing up through the other hole of our iris dura. And then I'm just going to pass through the beads along this top edge here. So I need to come through the 11 and the 8 and through the 11, and I'm just going to pass down through the super dura. I'm not taking my needle through any of the beads on that side. So I'm now ready to start my next little bit of right angle weave with my iris duras. And the first time I did it, I picked up 4, but from now onwards, we just need to pick up 3 because we're going to borrow 1 from the 4 before. So this will be my first one, the one that my thread is exiting from. I then need to pick up an 11. Just bring a couple of iris duras down a bit. I'm going to pick up an iris dura, an 11, an iris dura. Again, I'm making sure that I'm picking them up so that they're facing the same way. An 11, an iris dura. That's my 3 iris duras plus my 4th one from the round before, but I need 1 more 11. And then I'm going to pass through that iris dura from the round before, from the top to the bottom. My thread was exiting the bottom, but I'm coming back through from the top to the bottom. And hopefully your thread won't tangle. So if I pull that all the way through, you can see how that sits there now as my second lot of right angle weave. I'm going to pass through the beads. I want to be exiting the iris dura on the right so that I can add my next bit of right angle weave. But before I add on more iris duras, I'm going to do the little bit of decoration above the iris dura and below the iris dura. So without picking up any beads, I'm going to pass through the 11, through the iris dura, and up through the 11 and through that iris dura on the side. And I'm ready to do my little bit of decorating above this iris dura, and that, if you remember, was with 111, 18 and 111, and you just pass down through the empty hole of the iris dura. And we're going to do exactly the same on the base, so 111, 18, 111, and we're going to pass up through the empty hole of the iris dura. Just to get them to sit in that triangle, if you pull the 8 with your thumbnail and then pull your thread through, you'll see that it sits in a neat little triangle for you. So I'm now going to pass through the 11, and the 8 and the 11. And I need to be exiting the iris dura to add on my next little round. So I'm going to pass down through the iris dura but not come through any of the beads on that bottom edge there. And I'm ready to start my next little round of right angle weave. So I start by picking up an 11, an iris dura, an 11, iris dura, 11, an iris dura. So I've got 3 iris duras on my needle, and here's my 4th one from the previous round, but I need 1 more 11 to sit just on the other side of the iris dura. So my thread is exiting the base, and I'm going to pass back through that same iris dura from the top to the bottom. And there I have my 3rd little bit. So I'm going to pass through the beads till I get to the iris dura on the right, and up through the iris dura. And I can decorate the top and the bottom of this iris dura before continuing with my right angle weave. So that was an 11, an 8, an 11, and pass down through the empty hole, and an 11, an 8, an 11, and pass back up through that empty hole. And again, I just want to get them sitting properly, so I'm pulling the 8, the bigger bead, out, and then when I pull my thread through, they sit neatly there. And then I need to pass through these beads. So I'm passing through the 3 beads at the top, just through the 11, the next 8 and 11, and down through the iris dura, not catching any of the beads along the bottom there. And I'm ready to add my next lot of iris duras. So you would continue with that for a full length that is perfect to fit around your wrist or the wrist of the person you're making the bracelet for, remembering to stop short. And I know I say this often, but you've got to remember that you're going to add in a clasp, and when you add in a clasp, you can add as much as an inch to your beaded work. So I normally bead to 7 inches, or I make a 7-inch length bracelet, but I stop my beadwork at 6 inches. And then when I add on the clasp, that gives me my extra inch. So you need to bead all the way along, and then I'll show you how we do the other. All I've done is zap off my tail thread, and I'm now going to show you how to embellish around the top and lower edges, as well as adding in the clasp. So I didn't leave a tail thread here to add on the clasp on this end, but we're down the right hand side at the moment. So if we pretend that I've beaded my full length, I'm now going to add in this part of my toggle clasp before I go any further. So I'm going to pick up 3 of my size 11 seed beads, let those drop down. I'm going to pass through the attachment loop of my toggle and back down through the size 11 seed bead that is closest to my toggle. And when I pull that through and get my fingers out the way, you pull it all the way down. I now need to pick up 2 so that I match what I've got on this side. 2 more 11s. And I'm going to pass back through that same hole at the end of my iris dura. And when I pull that through, you'll see how that just makes a very neat finish to the toggle there. The size 11 champagne gold beads just encase that pointed end of my iris dura. So now we are ready to get on with embellishing the top and the bottom, and I'm just going to come through these beads. This is reinforcing my clasp as well, which is the part that gets the most wear and tear. So I'm passing back through the loop, back through that first one and through the 2 on the other side. So I've just given that a bit more reinforcement. And then what I want to do is pass up through the 11 and be exiting the 8. And we're now going to add beads to link up to the tip of the iris duro and then back down to the 8, up to the tip, down to the 8, and so on and so forth. And the way we do that is I'm exiting an 8, so I'm going to pick up an 8 and an 11 so that the 8s sit next to each other. I'm going to pass through the top hole of my iris duro. And while we're up at the top here, we're going to add a little picot edge. And that's with one of my amethyst 11s, an 8/0, and another one of my amethyst 11s. So 3 beads. And with my thread exiting the left-hand side of that iris duro, I'm going to pass back through the bead from the right to the left. And that gives me my little edge on the top. I now need to get from the top of this iris duro down to the 8. And I want an 8 sitting next to the 8, so I'm going to start with an 11 and then an 8. Pass through the 8 and you'll see that I've got my 8s sitting next to each other just as I did on this side. And now I need to get from the 8 up to the iris duro with 2 beads. It's going to be an 8 first and then an 11 through the top hole of that iris duro. Time to do the little picot edge on top of the iris duro, and that was with one of our purple 11s, an 8 and another purple 11, and we pass back through the tip of that iris duro. And you can see how that just finishes off the very top there. So I'm going to do exactly the same, finish off around this one and then show you how we add in this end of the clasp and turn around and do the I've just added in my 11 and my 8 to come down from the top of this iris duro to the 8 that was sitting above the iris duro on its side. And I'm going to add in the bar of my toggle before I embellish the base. So let me turn this a little, and you want to pass through the 11 that's sitting on the edge there as well. And just as we added in the other side, I'm going to add in the bar, but the bar needs a bit more leverage in order to get through the toggle part. So I'm going to pick up 4 of my size 11 seed beads this time. Drop those down, pass through the loop of the bar, and this time I'm going to come back through the 2 size 11s that are closest to the bar. That just puts my bar on a little stem so that it's easier to get through the toggle. And then again I'm going to pick up 2 more 11s and come down through the iris duro that's on the end there. And when I pull that through, you'll see just as we had on the side where we added the loop, we've got this neat little finish off here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread back through those 4 beads that I added, through the loop of my bar and back down through 4 beads on the other side, and I'll join you ready to embellish. I've reinforced my clasp by moving through all the beads, so if I had it the right way up, that's the way we've beaded. We've beaded back towards our tail, embellishing the top and adding in the bar. But I'm going to turn it round now, and we're going to do exactly the same to this edge as we did along here. So my thread is exiting the last 2 11s that I used to add on my bar, and I'm going to pass my needle up through the 11 and be exiting the 8. And I need my 2 beads to get up to the tip of the iris duro, so I've picked up an 8 and an 11, and I'm passing through the top hole of that iris duo. Now I need to do the little picot edge, which was with a purple 11, a champagne gold 8 and a purple 11, and I'm going to pass back through that top hole of my iris duo. Oops, got my thread caught around the bar. There we go. Now if you remember, I need to get back down to the 8 that's sitting above this iris duo that's lying on its side. So I'm going to, again, 2 beads, but this time pick up the 11 first, followed by the 8, so that the 8s sit together in the design. And I need to get from my 8 to the tip of the next iris duo. And because I want the 8 sitting next to each other, I'm going to pick up the 8 first and then the 11. And before I pass back down to the 8 that's sitting above this iris duo on its side, I need to complete my little picot top. So that's with a purple, an 8 and another 11 purple. And I'm going to pass back through that same hole from the opposite direction. Now I'm going down to the 8 with my 2 beads, but I want the 8 sitting next to each other, so it's an 11 first, then an 8, through that 8, and then to get up to the next one I'm going to start with an 8 followed by an 11 and through the top of the next iris duo. I'm going to finish with a picot edge on the top of that iris duo, so I want 1 11, 1 8, 1 11 with my accent colour incorporated, and I'm going to pass back through that top hole. And all that's left to do now is to finish or to join the gap, so from the top of my iris duo down to the 8. And I'm going to do that by picking up 1 11 and 1 8, and I'm going to pass through that 8. My thread has done a really good job of getting tangled in the rest of the beadwork today. So there you have the full design. All you need to do now is to end off your thread, and I like to do that close to where I can pull my knot inside a bigger bead. So I've passed through the next 11. I'm going to catch the thread between the 11 and the iris duo, make a loop and pass my needle through that loop. That's called a half hitch knot. But to make it secure you want to do it twice, so I'm going to do exactly the same. Pass my needle under the thread bridge, form a loop and pop the needle back through the loop and pull your thread through, and then I'm going to pass through the iris duo, and by doing that I'm pulling my knot inside the iris duo, and that way when I zap off my thread or you snip off your thread with your scissors, you're not going to pass through that knot and have your work become all undone. So there we go. That's our right angle weave iris duo bracelet. Make them in all sorts of colours. You could alternate colours. You could have different coloured iris duos for the top to the colours that you have on the sides. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments below and I'll answer them as quickly as possible. If not, thank you so much for your time and for watching, and remember to check back soon because I'll be uploading some new content. If you don't want to miss out, please hit the subscribe button that looks like a little alarm bell. It doesn't cost you anything, it just means you're following the page and you won't miss out when I upload some new content. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.